Hello, my name is Denise Harlow. I'm with the National Community Action Partnership. Today we are walking through the Center of Excellence developed CSBG organizational standards. This topic is organizational leadership, category 4. It's the first of several categories underneath vision and direction. Again, trying to articulate that community action organizations do demonstrate very strong leadership as an organization, as well as at the board level. So you'll see a couple things in this particular category that will impact your board work. So let's go to category 4.1. The governing board has reviewed the organization's mission statement within the past 5 years. Odds are many of you have done that in a strategic planning process, but if you haven't, now might be a good time to schedule a conversation about your organization's mission. When you have that conversation, you're going to want to make sure that A, your mission addresses poverty, and B, that the organization's programs and services are in alignment with that mission. Now, let's go back to that first part. Do I have to use the word poverty in my CAP agency's mission statement? No, you do not. That is not the intent behind this standard. It needs to imply or give the impression of that your organization is perhaps addressing poverty directly, or perhaps you're talking about family self-sufficiency or economic security or revitalized communities. There are a lot of different ways that we talk about our work across the country, so there's no one right way to do it, and you don't have to use the word poverty, but you need to convey that sense that we're really working to help families and communities thrive. And again, are your organization's programs and services in alignment with that mission? It's just good periodically to pause, make sure that we're not doing some work outside of left field, that we are not drifting away from our mission, that we are focused. Again, I would, if you have not done this, I would schedule a time to have this type of conversation, and as a board, document that you've had this conversation in your board minutes, not in a way that gets to too much detail or takes up too much space, just that this conversation took place, and then I would, again, have that noted directly in the minutes. All right, category 4.2. The organization's community action plan is outcome-based, anti-poverty focused, and ties directly to the community assessment. Now, your community action plan is something that your staff is primarily responsible for. We interpret this to be the document that they send to your state CSBG office every year or every 2 years, it depends on the state, that talks about the work plan for the upcoming year or the upcoming 2-year cycle. And a lot of times these plans are going to have formalized outlines and core documents that the state is requiring them to use. But in this CAP plan, it does need to be outcome-focused or outcome-based, which many CAP plans have really moved in that direction. We're talking about what happens to families or individuals as a result of our services. It needs to be anti-poverty focused, which makes sense because that's what the purpose of our organizations is, really to help move families and communities out of poverty. And again, ties directly to the community assessment. You maybe remember the video that we did on the community assessment. The idea in community action is that we really do assess our organization needs before we plan the services that need to happen. Because what happens is, what we need to have happen is that our services really need to be connected to what we've assessed are the needs in the broader community. Sometimes we'll see organizations where they're doing the same programs year after year after year, and that might be the case because that's how what your community needs you to be doing as a local CAP agency. But what you want to do as a board member is make sure that those programs and services tie back to that community assessment, and again, are talked about in your community action plan. Section 4.3, this one's a bit wordy, but the organization's community action plan and strategic plan documents the continuous use of the full Roma cycle. Now, many of you as board members have used the Roma cycle or have received Roma training. The Roma cycle is really a 5-step process, right? Roma means we assess our needs, we plan, we implement our programs, we collect data on the programs that we implement, and then we analyze the success or lack thereof of our interventions. And we go through that cycle again and reassess, plan again, implement. It's a continuous use of reflection and documentation that we are modifying what we're doing based on what we know worked or didn't work in the previous cycle. So what this standard is really telling us, especially from a board perspective, you're going to want to make sure that your organization in some way, shape, or form touches base with or documents the use of the full Roma cycle. that you're assessing, that you're planning, that you're implementing, that you're collecting data, and that you're analyzing the results, and that you're documenting the use of a certified Roma trainer somewhere along that process. Now, many CAP agencies, and more every day, have a certified Roma trainer on staff. That's great if you're able to do that. We have several hundred Roma trainers across the country. Several of us here at the partnership are certified Roma trainers. Perhaps folks in your state office are also Roma trainers, as well as some staff at your CAP agency. This does not mean you have to have a Roma trainer engaged everywhere along the process of either your CAP plan or your strategic plan, but you might find in your strategic planning process your staff talking about, we did talk to so-and-so who was a certified Roma trainer. We asked them if we were on the right track. We touched base with them to see about our customer satisfaction information. We touched base with them in some way, shape, or form. At minimum, that's kind of what we're talking about here in this organizational standard. So you as board members, you're going to want to probably talk to your executive director about how your organization is doing this, how you're implementing Roma, and hopefully Roma comes up as a board topic periodically throughout the year as a topic of conversation. Standard 4.4, the governing board receives an annual update on the success of specific strategies included in the community action plan. So you saw earlier that CAP plan needs to be tied to your community assessment. We talked about in the Roma cycle, your CAP plan kind of is an output of that planning process that tells the state about what you're going to be doing over the course of the year or two-year period. This kind of completes the cycle, you know, coming around the other side around an analysis of what's working and not working. So it talks here an annual update on the success of specific strategies included in that CAP plan. So again, this might happen in a program committee. It might happen in a staff's report to the board. And again, if I was a board member, I would just make sure that conversation or that update was included in my board minutes as having occurred. You don't necessarily have to include what the content of that update was. You just need to make sure that it's documented that that activity occurred and that you received an update of what's been going on. Standard 4.5, the organization has a written succession plan in place for the executive director or CEO that's been approved by the governing board, which contains procedures for covering an emergency or unplanned short-term absence of 3 months or less, as well as outlines a policy or a process for filling a long-term vacancy. What does this mean for you as a board member? This means you need to have a board-approved succession plan in place for your executive director. Good leadership means that we know how to keep moving forward if something unexpected happens. None of us ever expect the worst to happen, that someone may not show up on Monday morning due to a health issue for themselves, perhaps a health issue with their family. There are a myriad of reasons why someone may not be able to be in the chair on Monday morning. And you as a board need to be prepared that in an emergency situation, someone has been identified to sit in that chair who knows where all the good core contact information is, and they can keep the trains running on time. We have a toolkit up on our website at communityactionpartnership.com that can help a board get to an emergency succession plan relatively quickly. We have a document that you could download, copy and paste onto your letterhead to have it reviewed by the board. It helps you identify what are the things we need to think about. Who does need to sit in that chair in an emergency situation? Where do we keep the bank information or the insurance information or our key contract or funder information? All that information really needs to be accessible to that person in an emergency situation. The challenge, though, of course, is the next phase, the policy for a long-term vacancy or a permanent vacancy. If you have an ED who is planning their retirement, for instance, we know that that's going to be a long-term trend. It might be a transition that takes a period of time that gives you more of a window to certainly do the planning. But if you have someone who is then going to be gone and retiring or leaving the organization, you need to have a policy in place about what your steps are when that announcement is made. For instance, you might convene the executive committee. You might convene a search committee. You're going to talk about what that process is. And again, we have a tool up on our website. You can copy and paste the information to really get you started on developing that policy relatively easily, again, at communityactionpartnership.com. If you can't find it up on our website, talk to your executive director or reach out to us here at the partnership and we can make sure you have access to that resource. But again, this is under leadership because you're the leaders of this organization as the board. You are the fiduciary of this organization. If something were to happen to your chief executive, you're going to be the ones who are going to be responsible for making sure that that chair is filled with someone who knows what the next steps are. And having these things done in advance can mean you're navigating that critical point in the agency's history as smoothly as possible. It's never smooth, an emergency transition, but that you're prepared for that scenario. Standard 4.6, this is another big one, that the organization has a comprehensive risk assessment that's been completed in the last 2 years and reported to the governing board. We have a tool up on our website done by the Nonprofit Risk Management Center that can help an organization walk through a comprehensive risk assessment. This goes beyond HR, it goes beyond just financial. This is a broad-based plan. Now, you don't have to use our tool. You can use another tool that you've identified to meet your definition of comprehensive. This should be up to the individual organization to assess. But once that assessment is completed, the results need to be reported to the governing board. Now, this standard does not say that you have to show and document in the minutes what the results of that assessment were. Those results are yours. Those results of that assessment are yours as the board, and your results as the executive leadership staff of the organization. So when your agency is assessed whether or not did you meet the standards, whether or not you completed the assessment is the checkoff box, yes or no, we met or didn't meet the standard. There's nothing in the standard that says you then have to go back and address everything in your risk assessment, but of course I'm sure many of you are saying, well, if we find something in that risk assessment, we certainly want to address it, and yes. As good governance, you will want to address what's found in that risk assessment, but again, when it comes to meeting the letter of the standard, it says you need to have done that comprehensive risk assessment. Again, if you can't find the tool, let us know. We can certainly point you in the right direction. So that is Category 4, Organizational Leadership. We will see you on the next video.